Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode on the Power 365 show. On today's podcast, I'm excited to introduce James Oleinik, a principal group PM manager at Microsoft on the PowerApps team, whose team owns the experience found on web.powerapps.com and admin.powerapps.com, and specializes in the areas of app management, so application lifecycle management or ALM, and administration of PowerApps. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guide.com/132. Now let's have a chat with James. Hey James, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Good man, good. It's good to have you on here and for us to discover and learn all about your world of ALM administration. And it's two main portals you're responsible, right? The web, sorry, is it the admin portal? What was the other one?
So we have multiple admin centers. This is both spanning, for example, the AX and finance and operation products through LCS, but also the PowerApps and Flow admin centers and the Dynamics 365 like customer engagement admin center. So my team spans all of those, really all the management plane, including some of our tooling.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So we're going to drill into that, but before we get started, tell us a bit about what part of the world you hail from, and have you always been based in Seattle, or do you come from elsewhere?
No, I am very much a transplant. So I'm actually born and raised on the East Coast in Maryland, in the sleepy suburbs. But then I come to Seattle by way of Boston, so I went to school there, and that's where I met my wife. And we both jumped into the tech capital of the Northwest in Seattle. And that was about 9 years ago. And I joined Microsoft out of school, and I've been there ever since.
So did you go straight into the BizApps team, or were you in another team to start with?
No, I would say that it was not a straight jump into this area. I took a similar approach as many people do at Microsoft, which is really go through various different teams. I like to tell people that Microsoft is not just one company. It's a myriad of different businesses and teams. So I actually joined, originally the team I was going to join was a team called Kin. So Microsoft bought a company called Danger that built a phone called Sidekick phones, which were feature phones way back in the day. This is like when iPhone's just getting started. This is a precursor to the Windows Phone that we created, and I came in and I started to not get responses from the people that was coming in to join their team, and by the time I joined their Kin team had been moved into Windows Phone, and so I started my career here working on Windows Phone services, specifically marketplace services. So if you're purchasing things from the App Store or Marketplace, and honestly, I worked through there, and then I ended up going through the team that owns a lot of our developer experiences for our consumer businesses. So this is the Xbox Marketplace, the Windows Marketplace, Windows Phone Marketplace. And through that, I actually worked with a team that did application insights. And so way back in the day, James Phillips was the GPM for the App Insights team. They were probably less than 20 PMs back then. This was before he went to Power BI. And so that's where I made some connections. And then I eventually joined the PowerApps team when it was in private preview. So that's kind of my very windy journey to where I am today.
Wow. So how long have you been now in that BizApp org? How many years?
So I joined PowerApps 3.5 years ago when it was in private preview.
Yeah.
Before we did public preview in April.
So is this Sienna?
This is we had branded ourselves to PowerApps, I think, the winter beforehand when we bought that domain. But I think even today there are still a lot of naming conventions in the builds that still have Sienna and Project Sienna hidden in there. But we were the team that was really bringing Sienna to market. Okay. And the private preview was literally at that time a bunch of basically a website where people could sign up to join the private preview. And one of the first things I did, because I joined as running some of our web portals, like what is now make.powerapps.com and our backend services, I remember running exact target campaigns where we invited people who had submitted to private preview to come join our preview in like bands of like 1,000 and 10,000 and So that was one of the first things. It's a little different from where we are today.
How did the word get out on market back then around that time of that product? Was it just through web assets or what?
I mean, are you talking about the PowerApps idea?
Yeah, you're having 1,000 people at a time. You're saying you're sending those out to. Were people signing up for that at the very start? Was the momentum slow? What was the ramp up over the launch to a year in, if you like?
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think I wasn't there when the private preview first got announced, but I think the idea back then that Microsoft was going for a cross-platform low-code thing called PowerApps was known, right? But by then, I think it was a very, very mobile-centric thing that was developed initially. There hadn't really been envisioned a lot of this integration across Microsoft. Like, for example, the SharePoint integration was one of the first things I worked on into SharePoint lists. So I would say in terms of like how it went out, like certainly there were some demos out there of what Project Sienna did, but it was very much like kind of a research project. It wasn't like a true like product back then. And so there was a lot of excitement because you have to realize, Microsoft has gone through a lot of evolutions of different kind of applications like this, all like InfoPath and Access Web Apps, and it was very interesting. The sentiment from customers, like when we first kind of got them, the preview was like, is this going to be another one of those journeys where you get us super excited about this new platform and this new way of building apps, only to 3 to 5 years later pull the rug out from under our feet? But it's really awesome. What was really awesome is part of what changed as PowerApps started to really gain a lot of mind share and people started to get it, is that Satya, that big, is like, we're not going to invest in another one of these, InfoPath and all those things, not going to invest there. Like PowerApps is the way that you're going to extend our existing SaaS products. It is going to be the way that you build low code applications going forward. That is the big bet. And so that is really, honestly, like from a strategic point of view, Microsoft decided to bet big on PowerApps and Flow. And that's what really was different. But it did take people and the market a while to kind of like, oh, got it. Microsoft is really here to stay in this area, and now we're really seeing that. I mean, it's a very different journey for me seeing it from this kind of startup-y MSR team and project with like big ideas to where we are today, which is millions of users. Like everyone really taking a good hard look at like how they can leverage and make their company and employees more productive by using our platform.
Yeah. What's your opinion on the trajectory? If you compared it 4 years ago, Power BI came out and we've seen it go to full market domination. Do you feel that, we're only about, let's say, a year and a half, 2 years in from the CDS version of where PowerApps has gone. Where do you, if you look at those two parallel journeys, even though they're offset, are you seeing one just more of a gut feeling? Is one racing ahead of the other, or is Power BI still at the same point in time well ahead?
So you definitely hit on I'd say maybe a sensitive or a big topic, because Power BI definitely set the bar with how you really you take this like really easy to use viral thing, tap into an existing community and really an existing ethos out there, and give them something that they really, really love. And I think the long and short of it is that we're on that path, right? And we're actually on that that hockey stick curve that we like to say internally. But we're 3 years behind them. So like, can we sustain? Can we even grow and accelerate even more? That is of supreme focus and priority for our team right now. How do we scale? Because we're on that path. We are. We also want to like really beat them too. I think that's a kind of an internal goal.
No-brainer, right?
Yeah, but so we're there. It's just we're early on in that curve, right? And it still remains: can we keep it up? Can we gain that mind share and that market share over the next couple of years here? And that's like of supreme focus for our team.
Yeah. I tell you what, as in from somebody outside looking in, when James Phillips came into role, the successes he had in the other parts of the business, it just seemed to accelerate away, as in the whole biz apps journey. Me coming from a Dynamics background, it's just definitely come to a new level.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting, and I'll speak to that. What's interesting about James and the vision that he brings in, and this is, again, my personal opinion, is really twofold. I think some of the amazing thing that I think he brings is, number one, he brings a philosophy that you see, I mean, in general, in kind of the more startup or scrappy culture, which is you have to find a way of understanding the value that your product can give, allow people to sign up to it really fast, see that value within the first 5 minutes of using it, and hook them into that product, hook them into that value that you're giving to them. And I think that business applications and how they went to market, and also kind of the culture of the team and how they developed the product, didn't really embody that previously. For better or for worse, still super successful and a rich platform, but really being able to take that kind of that culture and that way of developing product, I think, is a huge strength for him. And I think, secondly, what I saw and what I've tried to emulate as well is, like, he is super community and customer first. Like, he jumped in, he's like, there wasn't huge kind of like engagement from that VP level with our MVPs, with our community, and with our top customers.
100%. Yeah.
And like they should know, we should know who they are. We should have we should be making them successful. I think that one thing I believe very strongly as we build product is, I think there's somewhat of a tendency for us to think we know what we want to go build and then go into a little black room and build it. Like, no, I want to, let's identify some customers. Let's just go solve problems they have, but do so in a generic way. So because my guess is that the way we're solving it for them, it's going to apply to other customers, right? And I think just that, like, we're building it for real people, and we need to, they aren't numbers, they aren't surveys. It's like they're actual people we're connecting with, and like that way of building product and getting it out there, getting data, iterating quickly. I think that just brought a spark of energy into the team. And I think it's really shown over the past couple of years.
Absolutely. Oh, without a doubt. Tell me about your role in the Power Platform now. So kind of what's your team? What's your responsibilities?
Totally. So I work within Charles Lamanna's organization, which is the organization that owns our low-code application platform. And we own the platform that supports the Dynamics 365 customer engagement applications, PowerApps, Flow, and CDS. And so that is this kind of scope of our larger organization. I know you've had Charles on before as well. But my team, I own, our team is called the Administration and Lifecycle Management Team, the ALM team within that organization. And for better or for worse, we own, like, our number one goal is to make sure that we provide enterprises and our customers the tools to secure, implement, and govern implementations of our applications in their organization, and be able to nurture and grow them and grow adoption within their company. And that's really the charter of my team. And it spans those different products that I talked about, because it really is, even every day, more and more one platform that they're all built on top of.
So paint a vision of where you see you getting to that point where you've got admin and ALM kind of performing at a level that you're comfortable, not the detail, but like, what's the vision of that for you?
I think there's a couple different things, the couple different ways I would answer that question today. I think number one, kind of our number one goal that I talk to my team and we're thematically driving towards is really to provide one experience. So even though we talk about being one platform, in practice, our experience doesn't tell that story. If someone wants to go and deploy and operate an instantiation of the sales application, the Dynamics sales application, they have to go to the Office Admin Center. They have to go deploy it in the Dynamics Admin Center, then do some customization in the actual runtime of the application. Then they need to go into the settings experience and actually make sure people are authorized. So it's just, what we have today is a lot of capabilities are possible. Like, you can go and do this, right? What we don't have today is a way for one place for them all to be provided. And I would say the second thing is, and which is really my second goal, is we need to find a way for a few to manage many, right? A lot of times today, it's very hands-on. You have to understand and have a very deep knowledge to be able to go and operate and manage a lot of these applications. And if you think, especially if you start to bring in the paradigm shift that PowerApps and Flow are driving, which is that anyone can build apps, the fact of the matter is you're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of people building apps, but your IT department's not going to grow, right? Not by the same order of magnitude. So you're still going to have 5, maybe 10 people that used to be managing, not just Dynamics, but probably Office 365, maybe some Azure resources as well. Now they need to manage also how we're going to have thousands of people now building. And so investing in those guardrails, investing in automation, investing in more best practices that are easy to implement once we get to one admin center, that is really our mission. That is our goal, for a few to manage many, right? And to really grow adoption of this application platform. And in my opinion, I would love for that IT department to be less around operation in the full extent of time, and also become more around nurturing and growing that across an organization. Because for better or for worse, they have a lot of these skills. They know what it takes. And the only way they're going to do that is if we have the guardrails and the automation to allow them to be able to scale. Because otherwise, it's going to be untenable and it's going to be for an organization to grow as fast as really we see the need in the business in a lot of these companies. So that's a long-winded answer of really saying that we need to unify our experience, and we need to enable a few to manage many, right?
Yeah.
In a comfortable way as we grow this platform. So
true. So one experience and few to manage many. I really like that. I had a scenario in a company I was working for a period of time. It was 1,800 staff. And it was what I called old school IT. So what happens when a new feature came? We were on Office 365. We had Azure, everything. When a new feature came out, the first thing that IT pretty much would do would switch it off, right? We don't want the staff playing with things that they don't know about. And I think that, there's been a bit of kind of that sound of coming out of the risk that anybody can create apps. What does that mean? Are they just going to be spinning up instances? Are we going to have access of the past, except for, in the cloud version of it? So I think it's so tight, you're bringing this experience together, the one experience and the few to manage many, because I think if that lands well with the admin side of an organization, IT departments, I think it'll increase adoption.
Yeah, and that story that you told me, I hear it every day, every week, from net new customers coming in, and that's just the reality of IT. For companies that have adopted Microsoft.
Well, they see it's more work, right? It's like, oh no, we've got another thing we've got to support. And I love the story from Virgin Atlantic and just how they really got their admin tools set up well. Yep. Probably one of your first adopters, definitely case studied, and just did a very robust job of enabling the organization, but maintaining the support around those apps. It's a great case study. Anyhow, let's move forward and look at governance administration in your portfolio. What's involved in managing and nurturing the rollout of business applications for the enterprise? So what are you thinking around governance and administration? It's fine for smaller businesses where they can kind of wrap their arms around everything. But for the enterprise, how do you see that governance and administration coming together?
Yeah, I think I think that here is the framework. So I think what's actually awesome about what we've been trying to do on my team over the past 6 months is try to provide a framework for how a company should approach the adoption of this, right? We actually have in the Business Application Summit 3 months ago, we published what we called an admin in a day, although I think some people wanted to call it like governance in a day, which is like, what's the frame? How should you approach this, right? And the kind of core tenets that we really, really talked about was was how do I secure? How do I monitor? How do I automate and act? And then how do I go and implement? Like what's the right ALM and lifecycle process around it? And so really like, and I also liken the journey to this, right? Which is like, I talk a lot about like what I view as kind of like a new admin journey coming in, right? Which is, and there are multiple different journeys that admin comes, depending if you're coming from an ERP implementation or a CRM implementation, or people are building an app, Canvas apps and flows through PowerApps and Flow. But in my mind, first I have to understand how do I secure this? What are my tools at my disposal to build those guardrails, right? And then there's that evolution of like, okay, what are my tools to monitor and operate, understand what's out there today, right? And who's doing what? Because that's of even more and more importance as you're enabling more people to build, as opposed to like the more classic CRM or ERP implementations where you're probably working through a partner. It's very, very centralized, right? And then there's like automation has to be top of mind, right? Like, and how do you automate the awareness of best practices within your organization? And then finally, there's that understanding like, okay, if I want to actually set up some processes that a DevOps process or a lifecycle process or an authorization process, how do I go do that, right? And so like what I tell people is like, if you want to talk about like what's involved, well, you have to think about all those three categories, and there's a bunch of capabilities that we have, and we're continuing to build to try to make each one of those easier. Have both tools that can do it from an automated point of view, and also one experience to do it from the Power Platform Admin Center. And the bigger the company, the more specialized you may be. You might have, for example, a team that's solely around security and governance in your organization. That's different than, for example, what you're doing from like a DevOps or an IT perspective. And so that is kind of the framework that I tell the people. The awesome thing is that we have a admin and date content around this. And also, even beyond kind of governance and administration, there's also an aspect here where we call building a center of excellence. So this is kind of like, maybe once you've got hooked, right, on Dynamics, on BizApps, on the Power Platform, the how you actually go and roll that out to an organization of substantial scale, right? There's a nurture and growth aspect to how you actually even need to think around growing a culture and supporting that adoption within, and right. And that's not even talking about kind of like the more historical governance and ALM that you think through. There's also that aspect as well. And we also have a lot of content and success stories around, like you talked about Virgin Atlantic or GSK, or Chevron was one of a great example of that's doing this today. And so we have a lot of examples of customers that have literally gone through the same journey, all the way from like, what are the guardrails I set up, to how do I go and grow this within my company, right? And that's kind of the journey. It's kind of the framework that we talk about, and that's also the same that we're echoing in our trainings and our content that we're increasingly developing and sharing to customers and partners alike.
Yeah, good. So you mentioned COE, or a Center of Excellence there. Do you see those ultimately with an organization becoming like a DevOps scenario that, the platform is put in place in the organization, and then an app is built, deployed, managed, and the next app's built, and multiple apps from within that organization gets transitioned over many years even? Is that where you see the COE ultimately maturing inside an organization? So
we actually already see that today. I wouldn't say that there's going to be a one-size-fits-all, because I think a lot of it depends on the size of the company and how they roll it out. But at Chevron, that's exactly what they're doing. They actually are supporting multiple paradigms where their central IT department actually is building DevOps pipelines that manage and automate the deployment of more centralized applications. And it's not just centralized for all of Chevron, but centralized, think of it, for some of their individual businesses. What they also have is people can actually request to, get their own environment, or they can use the default environment to build their own kind of personal productivity apps or kick the tires, right? And so they're really supporting both motions, which is if people want to learn or get started in a more scoped way, they have a way for them to kind of request a workspace or just work within the default environment. But then they also have a bunch of automation set up for if you wanted to promote those apps into kind of a more dedicated development environment. Say their Gulf office has like an environment for their production apps that are more for their region. Like they're automating that. And their role, what their center kind of like IT is basically building the automation that these other facets of the business can leverage, because they each have their own IT departments too. So what I've actually seen is how you actually roll this out and what a center of excellence means. A lot of it actually has to depend on what is the structure of the companies. Like, how do they approach IT? But we're absolutely, to your original question, are we seeing that kind of automation? We're already seeing it today. But I don't necessarily think it's a one-size-fits-all thing. And what we're actually doing on our team is we're learning a lot from what customers like Chevron are doing, because that is actually things that we're thinking around, okay, like how can we do what they've done and kind of manually created and pull that into the product and allow people to maybe set that up with a click of a button, for example. That's kind of my end goal of this, where we like to talk about in product the pit of success. We want our customers to fall into the pit of success, right?
I like that, the pit of success.
And I think no more is that more pertinent here, especially if you talk about like a lot of this automation, because there is some complexity. A lot of it's possible today, but you have to be experienced to kind of set this up. And so really our mission is like lowering that bar and enabling a lot of that behind the scenes for people to fall into those type of best practices. And we have a long way to go, but we're definitely committed on our team to kind of continue to work in that area.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, what role is Azure DevOps featuring in your thinking? What's been released so far, and what are you thinking about going forward from that perspective?
So it's super top of mind and super relevant because in Inspire, we announced a preview of new Azure DevOps tasks for the platform. And they're actually available right now. And I'm super excited. They've been really, really received well. Even from the Dynamics community, there were some unofficial MVP tools for a while. And so we've really taken on that and built it in a first-class way in the product. And we're looking to kind of announce those as GA, hopefully very soon here. And so it really like the commit is really a commitment on our side to continue to improve our all-up ALM stance. And by the way, it's not just from an Azure DevOps. There's a lot that we're continuing to work on in our platform around how our solutioning and partitioning and layering work. Because DevOps is really just calling into APIs, be it solution management APIs or packaging APIs and our environment lifecycle APIs that the platform already exposes today. And so really our commitment in this area is twofold, which is number one, improving kind of the APIs and the reliability and capabilities there, but then also allowing those to be leveraged through Azure DevOps, through PowerShell, through our management connectors that are available through PowerApps and Flow as well in the full extent of time. We want people to really support automation anywhere, depending on what tool set they use today.
Do you think you'll get, I don't know, do you know Shan MacArthur, right?
Yes, yeah.
So do you ever think, I don't know if you saw his tooling before he came into Microsoft, but he was probably the most sophisticated operator in the market when it came to, package deployment, being able to deconstruct and reconstruct packages and their various parts and allow developers to work on them and then automated builds and things like that. Do you think you're going to get to that potential level of parity in the near future?
I think we have to. And the good news is Shan's the guy that's working on it right now. So we have to. We just plain on have to. And there's a bunch of improvements that are coming out this calendar year, and that commitment and that investment is going to continue through spring of next year. And we just have to, because as more and more companies start adopting our biz apps more at scale at their companies, again, it's a few managing many, right? And automation and supporting a strong lifecycle management is just key to that. One thing that I think gets a little bit lost in today that I actually think is also important in this area is that our applications are also complicated to configure and set up, right? Forget about like making changes in the customizations, but even just authorizing and licensing people to be able to access these things is actually like not easy today. And so that's definitely another area that my team's looking at trying to improve as well. I've gotten strong feedback on stage a couple times from people. It's like, you try just giving someone access to one of your applications and doing 10 of those a day, which is like a lot of that's people's jobs. And so that I think is also not lost on us. I think the ALM side is like you start thinking around like being DevOps and like thinking around changes of the applications themselves. But, operating the applications is actually a huge area as well. Monitoring, authorization, supportability. And that's also a huge part of what we're trying to invest in our team as well.
So, one of the feedbacks I've had just in recent weeks, even as early as this week, in talking about administration is a lot of people are, saying that they now have to keep a dictionary of URLs of where to do stuff, and keep in mind, these are people that, let's say, have been long-term in this game. They're not the newcomers. They've been around a while. So, change always affects people differently. Is there a plan to get to a single unified administration, like a URL to rule them all, so to speak? That if you go there, you will easily navigate to wherever else you need without having to remember, I think it might be, is it 7 or 8 URLs at the moment?
In short, yes, absolutely. The strategy that we have is the Power Platform Admin Center. For better or for worse, that's the name that is going to be that single unified plane for management and administration. And I do think that we haven't. I understand there's also kind of like an ISV aspect of it too, but at least for the partner, like the SI and the admin community, we want one plane, and that's going to be the Power Platform Admin Center. And I think for the ISV, we also want that single plane. Like we actually had the ISV Studio that was just launched for Dynamics, the Dynamics 365 CRM community, just a couple months ago as well. So I think you already see this in the maker experiences for PowerApps and Flow around customizing the Dynamics and PowerApps applications, that they're unifying to kind of a single shell for customization. We aspire to do the same thing for partners and SIs that are and admins who are administrating the platform, and we aspire to do the same thing for ISVs, because we know that's a huge problem today. I know. I hear the same thing.
But I was of the opinion, right, is that a lot has changed in 18 months, and a lot had to be pulled apart to be able to put back together right. And so that's my take on it.
Yes, it's as if we kind of slapped all these products together, wiped the blade of blood, and said it was one thing. Although in practice, the experience are taking some time to catch up. But that is a huge focus. And actually, for later this year at Ignite, I think we're going to be in a much better place for our Admin Center. We're going to have a bunch of functionality already pulled into the Power Platform Admin Center from both the Dynamics CRM Admin Center and PowerApps and Flow as well.
Are you pulling any functionality in that you can speak of from Office 365? So like I'm thinking, you mentioned licensing there before, yes, which normally you got to jump into O365 to kind of ascertain how many do I have, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So are you going to just visualize content from there within that portal as well?
So we're actually talking with that team right now. Between you and me, actually, one of the, call it the dumbest integrations that I want to do right now is that there is a billing tab within the Office 365 Admin Center that shows your subscriptions, your invoices from those subscriptions that have your licenses for Dynamics, allows you to give people and give them a license. And we're talking about that team around, let's just have that be a presence within our Admin Center, and then start customizing that and making it more tailored to our type of business application subscriptions. That is literally having that conversation right now, and we're going to iterate on that as well based on the feedback we get. I don't want our admins to have to go to anywhere else to go do their job. That's my goal. That's kind of my vision for our single entry point.
I like it. We're days away from October, and of course that's a new wave of of content GAing. What's the big milestones for you in your perspective? What are you happy about that's landing in October?
So what I'm really excited about is kind of threefold. I think number one, I'm excited that we're going to actually be unifying a bunch of experiences into the Power Platform Admin Center. That's number one. I think number two, as a part of that, we're actually improving the management of several different parts of that experience, such as application deployment and management and capacity management. So that's like your storage and the capacities that you purchase and manage. So I'm excited that by pulling them together, we're also improving a bunch of those experiences. The other thing that I'm really, really excited about is the continued investments we're making around our tooling. So the aforementioned DevOps tasks, the management connectors that allow you to use Flow and PowerApps to manage your actual implementations on the platform, and also our PowerShell Commandlets. And then third would be is that we're continuing to invest in our governance and data loss prevention policies. Which is primarily applicable to the PowerApps and Flow aspect, because it's more around building those guardrails for customers that are allowing a bunch of people to build within an organization.
Yeah. So basically, an internal connector doesn't get lit up against a public connector type thing and leak data.
Exactly. Data leakage is really the top thing that I talk with almost every single customer, call it before they even commit to PowerApps or even afterwards and they're rolling it out. Data leakage is really, I'd say, number one top of mind in the security space for people. And it's not like it's they're new problems, because I think a lot of the customers that we talk with, they already have to deal with this even today in a lot of the tool set. But the reality of it, and we honestly tell them, is that PowerApps and Flow, it really lowers the bar for the people who can start to build these applications. It makes it so much easier to pull it together and connect data sources. And there's a lot of fear, right, from, and understandably so, from the IT, the InfoSec folks within companies that are worried about data getting out, right, and data exfiltrating to personal locations. And a lot of times, it's actually, I don't think, it's not even like they're worried about the disgruntled employee problem, even though that's an issue. They're just worried about just people just unknowingly doing wrong best practices, right? It's not even like they're trying to be malicious, right?
No. It's accidental stuff, right?
Exactly, and and when you're really expanding the number of people who can build, it increases your surface area to worry about that, right? And these are a lot of, and really building capabilities and policies that assuage those concerns and give the enterprises confidence that they can roll out. They can roll out to like 50,000 people building, is one of the huge challenges for my team going forward. And it's a commitment that I would have that, we are not perfect today. We'll definitely not say that. But we are committed to continuing to build those capabilities over time.
Yeah. And I suppose it's a fine line to juggle between over-securing something so people go, I can't be bothered. So it's too hard to either access or get data or share data where they need to. And then, of course, being secure enough, of course, for the leakage not to happen.
It is I would say that's absolutely correct. It is a delicate balance between enabling those folks in the business to be productive, to build their solutions, and also address the concerns of the enterprise, of the IT, of the InfoSec, and that's honestly that balance is we're between that, but we're driven by our customers, right, and we're driven by what we hear and who we talk to, and that obsession, that conversation is what guides us to where we invest.
In the tooling there, you mentioned you mentioned PowerShell. Tell me, where are we at with PowerShell right now, and where do you see us going? Because it is a very effective tool. How are you expanding on that?
So although we are not here today, one of my first, I call it like cultural or thematic things that I push on my team is being API first. And although we aren't today, how that manifests for our team is that any capability that's in our admin center, they should be able to do that through PowerShell or through our management connectors. Awesome. And in the full extent of time, our DevOps tasks. Understandably, we're not there today. But that is really my goal. Like, that is how I view it going forward. And that goes for like net new capabilities we launch. Well, you should be able to automate that, right? Just plain and simple. And that is really the commitment we have. Now, the reality of where we are today for PowerShell is we definitely have, there are PowerShell Commandlets, and there's actually some community libraries out there for if you want to go talk to the CDS or old XRM SDK, right? That's available. We have PowerShell Commandlets that technically in the documentation is called our Online Services API. So this is really the management plane for Dynamics orgs, which we call environments now. That's available. There's a PowerShell library for that. And then for PowerApps and Flow, we have a set of admin commandlets as well that provide environment management and resource and permission management for the assets within PowerApps and Flow. So I think one of the first things that we don't have solved yet, but like we definitely aspire to, is well, first of all, bringing them together into kind of maybe one library that you go and install. But there is still some, I would say that even more so than that, the importance of what we have to do is there's also just a lot of capabilities that aren't available through that means. So to me, like that's our number one priority, but do so in a way where we're moving towards a direction where people can just install one kind of management library for our platform, for our app platform going forward. I think that's going to be a little farther out, but like the first priority is just try to make things more automated across the platform.
Yeah.
And PowerShell is a huge part of that.
Yeah, so so important. I like that whole idea that anything that you can do through the portal can be done through an API as well. I think that's perfect. Tell us about 2014. I got my first look at Microsoft Lifecycle Services, or LCS, and a lot of people might not know what this is. It's something that's been in the finance and operations side of the business, and particularly as a lot of on-premise based deployments have wanted to move to the cloud. It's a key set of tooling that I know, like the Fast Track team have had for some time. That makes it easy for them to move. But what we haven't seen is anything around the CE side of the business, or Dynamics CE, or the Power Platform of this great tooling. Are there any plans to change that?
So to answer your first question of what the heck is LCS?
Yeah, let's go with that.
So as many people who are closer to Dynamics understand, there's really two kind of, there are multiple parts, but there's another part of the Dynamics application business where we offer a suite of ERP applications for manufacturing, for retail, for back office, for finance, and even talent and HR. And the reality of a lot of these types of applications is that there is a huge amount of complexity to implementing them. And as you spoke to, like, there's a huge amount of steps of pulling a lot of these systems that are probably deployed in multiple places on-prem into the cloud. And so what LCS is, first and foremost, is it is a implementation hub for these types of applications, like on top of the Dynamics Finance and Operations suite. So, which is really how you go and implement and deploy these ERP applications onto that online platform of Dynamics. And the amazing thing, if you look at the difference between what that team, which was previously kind of a separate team within our business applications organization, what they've done for there as opposed to CRM is there is a very strict workflow and methodology around how you go and implement these types of applications. And the reality of it is that SIs and customers really, really like that, right? Because there's so much complexity there. And on the CRM side, a lot of the feedback that I've gotten is that we expose a lot of capabilities, right? But they're very raw. They're resource focused. They're resource oriented. They're not task oriented. There's no workflow around how you would go do something. And so what's awesome with what LCS did for the ERP implementations is they really gave you a best practice and methodology for doing that. And that was effectively written by our Fast Track teams for the product, right? And then for CRM, although we use that a little bit for some of our on-prem to online migrations, it really, we don't have that similar kind of, I'll call it a pattern, right, within our experience, right? Now, and so I think that's one key thing around, like, why you should care about that is because we've actually we're merging together these experiences and these teams right now. And we're really thinking around, like, okay, like, how can we take the best part of LCS and then apply that more generically, right, across our platform? One thing I would also say, which is just honestly a little different around like the different types of applications and businesses that what LCS did, is that if you look at a finance system, an HR system, you spend a lot of time upfront implementation. But after it's implemented, we really don't touch the darn thing, right? Like operating it, yes, there is that cost, but I mean, that hopefully isn't something that you're churning a lot over time, right? And that's just the reality of it. But if you look at, for example, your CRM, your sales, your service, your marketing applications, and the myriad of custom applications, the PowerApps and Flow, that is not as much the case, right? We certainly could, I think there's room to provide a better implementation guidelines and the tooling there, but the operation supportability is way more important because the cardinality and numbers of those applications and customization is so much higher, right? And so like as we bring these together, we really, and this is a huge challenge for my team, is like, how do we balance the applications that are high implementation costs but lower operational costs to applications where there's like really low implementation costs but then huge management burden over time, and then there's apps in between, right? And so that is kind of the as we bring these together and leveraging the best of both worlds in terms of what we provide today from a tooling and administrative perspective, that is the balance. That's the path we have to chart on our team.
Yeah, I know. LCS was around before Fast Track was even a thing. That I remember. Fast Track came about 3 years later, but. Is it still intended, like, the Fast Track that the Lifecycle Services that I remember, is that this plugged into Azure, it would allow you to, for example, take an on-prem SQL database, deploy it into a tenant in Azure, go through the various upgrade paths, depending on how far back. So you could either choose to do a data migration only, or really a full migration up through the various levels of the application to the current operating version, which you could then move into the cloud when it had parity with the cloud version. Is all that kind of functionality, so one of the things is that I've heard so many partners complain that tool set's not been available for them to do with customers. And of course, Microsoft stepped in and the Fast Track team have really addressed that at scale. But I'm hearing that now Fast Track are becoming inundated, with work, and might be running into scaling issues of the number of projects that they can put through their desk at a time. So what do you know? Have you got far enough into it yet to know where that's going to go?
I would say not yet. Although you do bring a very, very different, interesting point that how the tooling that LCS provides around how you develop those applications is very different than what we offer for customer engagement today, right? Like you can literally go and deploy your own, for development purposes, your own version of ERP onto your own Azure subscription, right? And they have the method, the workflow there that partners can go do this, and you can iterate very quickly there, right? And there's some structure there, and there's some goodness there, right? But for CE, we don't have that, right? We don't have that today. So how do we provide more structure around the development and implementation experience is a huge question that we have as we bring together the best of both worlds here. Because today, CE is unfortunately a very environment or org, to use the old terminology, centric process. I develop my stuff in a dev environment and then have to manually move those changes, right? And that is not a very scalable process, right? And trying to get to source-driven control to a DevOps process. In my mind, we have to start moving towards more structure of like a la what LCS does today, right? Allowing you to have that, right? And another thing of like another step towards that vision is with some of the recent changes we made around provisioning, where you don't purchase instances of Dynamics anymore for customer engagement. You purchase capacity, and then as long as you have available capacity, you can spin up and spin down organizations as you see fit. Is really trying to move towards a more DevOps world, right? And we're not there today, but hopefully some of the trends you see in decisions we're making is trying to get towards that world, because that very much that scripted deployment, that scripted check is a world we want to get to, right? Where you making customizations and changes in production should be a break glass approach. That shouldn't be your day to day, right? And we have a road to get to between where we are and to realize that vision, but that's the road we're on right now.
So do you see a point where we'll get to like elastic deployment, where I'll give you an example. There's an environmental catastrophe, let's say an earthquake, right? And all of a sudden, let's say I've got a PowerApps portal in place and I'm going to be smashed because people are making inquiries if I'm a non-for-profit that's running on there. So I need that to scale, right? Mm-hmm. For maybe 24 hours or whatever while the issue's happening, and then taper back. Now, that's something that we've known in Azure for ages. Do you see that type of elasticity coming to CDS ultimately?
Yeah, it's already there today to a certain extent, and our hope going forward, right, is that, a lot of that elasticity is handled by us as a platform, right? Which is like you building on top of a SaaS platform, right? Like within maybe some of the confines of what we provide you, right? Like we need to scale to handle that, right? And today, we don't offer like for LCS, like in the ERP space for F&O, right, finance and operation apps, like you actually purchase different tiered environments, right?
Yeah.
But for C, that's not the case, right?
No,
like
exactly.
At least not yet. I mean, I'm not saying we have any future plans, but like today, you just you provision an environment, and we scale that based off your needs, right?
Yeah. But the risk is throttling, right? Which is kind of counterintuitive to that, which I know you got to have throttling for other reasons. But anyhow, we could go down a rabbit hole there. But
I think, for example, think of it this way, which is, if there are tools, right, or different mechanisms we need to expose to like solve that elasticity problem better, we're going to go do it, right? I think that this is a real and present problem, right, for as more and more and larger companies and larger workloads adopt our platform. So we will like commit to like make sure that we improve on this going forward, because like that's just a reality of people building on our platform.
Yeah. I don't know how close you are to the ISV side of things, and really this is my wrap-up question before we just go to some quick fire, but ISV and scripted deployment, there's ISVs out there that want to use CDS as the core of their applications. They like that, all that infrastructure is taken care of. It plugs into everything, the API layer, consistent interface experience, that type of thing. But at the moment, the only experience is to deploy either via AppSource, and I know there's work being done in that. But will there ever be a model that, let's say, somebody comes to my website and I have, a product to sell flowers online or set up a flower online store, and I want to, there's 3 package versions. They don't know that this is all running on Microsoft tech behind the scenes. That's kind of like, duck on a pond or below the water. All they want to do is pay me, $1,000 a month for the flower business in a box. And behind the scenes, I want to run the scripts and build out my tenant environment subscription. That's all going to be billed back to me as the owner of that infrastructure. Are we ever going to get there? Or is that kind of on the roadmap or anything like that?
I think we will. I think that I maybe end with I think another good person for you to get on this show would be Julie Strauss from our team, because she really is driving the kind of envisioning from both a business and tooling perspective around our ISV community. I think right now we're trying to give those capabilities and build out our marketplace first, right? But I think that we've launched the ISV Studio that gives more data to ISVs around their deployments. I think more tooling and automation around them being able to manage those and even build on top of it that's just going to be a reality if we continue to grow that kind of suite. I would say that I don't think that what you're talking about right now is. I'm not aware of that coming in the next 6 months.
No. I'd say it's a bit of build work to go into for it to happen.
Right. But I think that if our community of people building on top of platforms growing gangbusters, we're gonna have to go and build that out, right? And I think Julie could even talk your ear off around a lot of the learnings and conversations she's doing with the ISV community today.
Yeah, I want to see the first $1 billion ISV. On CDS, right? And Salesforce have one, and another one chasing up the rear of that one, and so I want to see that become a reality.
I think it must become a reality, right? If we're actually going to, if you talk about realizing the Power BI growth, if we don't have that, we will not we won't be on that path. Right. A huge part of our strategy is to make an ISV and broader partner community successful on this platform. And if we don't do that and we can't enable that, then we're not going to realize that growth. And it's a huge thing that Charles talks about, right? It is one of the key priorities for our team.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, you ready for some quick fire questions to wrap it up?
Sure.
This is more about life. Would you rather hear the good news or the bad news first?
Bad news.
Why?
Because a lot of times it's not as bad as people think it is.
Yeah, nice. What was your first car?
My first car was a Ford Taurus wagon that barely got me to high school.
Which famous person have you met?
Oh, man. Honestly, most recently, I met a pitcher for the Mariners while I was playing golf. Recently retired.
Wow.
But I haven't met a lot of bigger, more famous people outside of that.
What show on Netflix did you binge watch embarrassingly fast?
West Wing was definitely a favorite of mine.
If you could get away with a crime, what crime would you commit?
Oh man, I plead the fifth.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. You probably don't want to admit to something like that, right? Okay, here's the deep one. When was the last time you cried and why?
Well, it was 2.5 years ago when my son was born.
Ah, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
He's healthy now, but at the time there were just some. It wasn't like the easiest birth in the world, but it all worked out in the end. But that was definitely less time.
Yeah. Awesome, man. You've given me Julie Strauss as someone to have on the show. If people want to kind of follow you online, are you on any social media that they can follow your posts or whatnot?
Absolutely. I'm on Twitter. It's at Oleinik, and also on LinkedIn. And people can connect to me if they have any questions. Happy. My email is also jamesol@microsoft.com if people want to have any questions. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that show. My name is Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. I'd really love it if you could review the show on iTunes. It helps rank the podcast higher. It's been running 2 years now, so if you would like to leave me a 5-star rating, go to nz365guy.com/iTunes. That is nz365guy.com/iTunes. It'll auto-direct to the iTunes page that you can leave that feedback. I would appreciate it. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/132. See you next week.